Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Dr. Sally Ryan. She's an enthusiastic and experienced leader in the veterinary industry who obtained her DVM at Oklahoma College of Veterinary Medicine. She worked as a shelter, primary care, and emergency veterinarian, and currently works as a professional service veterinarian, providing medical education for veterinary teams. For almost 20 years, she led a multi-site emergency veterinary organization as medical director. And she is currently the founder, instructor, and consultant for Veterinary Leadership Services, which is what we are going to be talking about today. We are going to highlight her experience in training and development for veterinary teams and the magic behind successful implementation of these programs. But Dr. Sally, thanks so much for being on with us today.
Hi, Crystal. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I will admit that right now there's a cat right here. If I could just aim my camera downward. She's very interested in this podcast episode, apparently. So let's see if she wants to move along. I know all of us. Oh, here she is. We'll just have her as a quick guest. This is Shadow. She doesn't make an appearance. Usually it's Hex. They look like twins, but they're not.
All right, I'm kidding.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's kick this off with a little icebreaker. What pets do you have?
Well, I have a golden retriever who is actually living with my son in Austin, Texas. So we share Walter, the golden retriver. We share him.
He sounds like a lucky dog to have two homes. He's very wanted.
Yeah, he's a good boy, and he's going to visit in a couple weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing my son, but I really am looking forward to seeing Walter, I have to say.
I totally get it. Wonderful. So thank you so much for being on today to talk to us more about training and development. I'd love to just start off with getting a little bit more of your background and experience in this area. And for those of us who might be kind of new to these conversations, many people from veterinary medicine, so technicians, doctors, people in leadership, let's just paint the picture for them and give them a bit of an idea of the landscape of training and development. What is it? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, well, I think I fell into training and development because I worked, as you mentioned earlier, I worked as a medical director for a multi-site ER group for many years. And when I started that job, we had a little bit going on in regards to training and development. And so they did a pretty good job, but our business grew quickly, and we hired a lot of employees, and then we added on specialty care we partnered with another group. And so, as businesses get big, they become more complicated. And I just really recognized that we needed to do a much better job of training and developing our employees so that they could perform at their highest level. And so that they could really, first of all, enjoy their job. I think people just enjoy their work more when they feel competent. So that's a really good thing. And then also, there's just so much to learn in veterinary medicine, and it's only becoming more complicated.
Yeah.
And so in order to really, I think, meet the objectives of any organization, you just have to focus on training and development. So that's really where it all started. But honestly, I've developed a love for helping people learn and grow, whether it be medical topics or leadership topics. I love it when people, the light bulb comes on, and then they can not only take that information that they've just learned, but then apply it, because that's really what learning and training is all about. It's not just getting smart. It's really about, taking that information that we're accumulating over the years through various formats and then really applying that so that we can meet the objectives of the business that we're in.
Wonderful. So I can hear how this really originated from a pain point. There was a need. You've all had to grow. People needed to learn and expand and be able to apply their knowledge. And you found that you really enjoyed and loved training. Like you may have a natural mentor gene or teacher gene in you. Yeah.
I love teaching. I've been a professional services veterinarian, kind of my second career for about 4 years. And all of my job, really my primary job is training and education. And in this area, it's all medical topics. And I absolutely love it. I always knew I liked to teach, but I didn't really realize it until, just moving into this new job over the last few years, where this is my primary responsibility, how much I really enjoy it.
Nice. Okay. Paint the picture for me then. And what is it that you would do at like a typical, say, month or 3 months? I don't know how long your training packages or what the arc of a current development program looks like, but I'm curious about what are the topics that you're training on? How long does it normally take? Just trying to imagine it.
So are we talking about some of the education that I'm doing currently, or how I create a training and development program?
So you mentioned earlier that you had worked as a medical director. What were some other experiences that informed this, what you currently do in training and development?
Well, I think another area really that I've been focusing on extensively over the last 5 years is learning and development in the area of leadership. And so again, it's something I've always been interested in as a leader, a medical director in an organization. In order for me to develop the skills that I needed to do that job well, I had to do a lot of personal development over the years. One of the things I have learned is that most veterinary professionals get thrown into leadership positions with very little support, training, education. And then we wonder why we struggle, with that. And so one of the things I've really focused on over the last, 5 or 6 years is providing leadership webinars. So I've done lots for Vet Girl, and I have a few workshops. And it's all around leadership development. So how do we, lead well in veterinary practices? The focus.
I really appreciate that you provide that type of service because I hear it regularly in the clinics that I serve with people who have been promoted to some type of management position, whether they're a lead technician, a practice manager, an operations director, a medical director, and feeling like they were promoted because they were very good at their job. They were never really taught management skills or leadership skills, which are two different sets of skills. And as you had mentioned earlier, like feeling confident is a big part of enjoying our work, to look forward to coming in each day and knowing that we have the skills necessary to get the job done. And it's really crucial that time is spent learning leadership skills or management skills. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. So why is it important? If I were, let's say I'm a practice owner and I come to you and I'm like, all right, tell me, why do I need this in my organization? How will it benefit me?
Yeah, I think, when we talk about training and development, really it encompasses all of the learning opportunities that we could have as veterinary professionals that help us learn how to do our job, or maybe even be promoted or take on new tasks. And so I think that when you think about the potential benefits of having a training and development program, and what I'll say is, let me qualify that, a comprehensive one and a well-coordinated one is what's important, because there's a lot of training and development programs out there that are pretty haphazard. And so when we have really good comprehensive and coordinated programs and an approach, it really, I think bottom line is it helps us achieve the objectives of the organization, because ultimately we're only as good as the ability of the people in our businesses to perform at a high level. And so that really is the main reason. But I think there's some other reasons where it's really valuable. And probably the second one is that it really enhances employee engagement. And when I talk about employee engagement, it's about an employee's feeling of loyalty or commitment toward a business or an organization. And obviously, we want employees that perform at a high level, but also are really committed. They feel good about where they're working. They're contributing at a high level. And so good development programs really help to enhance employee engagement. And you can see that in things like employee engagement surveys, for example. So with all of the research that is out there about what is it that employees want in the places that they work, well, on the top of that list is always good development and learning opportunities. So if you want to attract and retain good employees, you've got to have opportunities for them to continually learn and grow. That's what they're looking for. And so I think that is probably the other reason. And I think, the third reason is we talk a lot about wellness issues in veterinary medicine. And I think one of the things that happens is when people are not feeling competent in their job, maybe it's moving, like you said, a clinician who was an exceptional clinician. Now they're in a medical director role, but they haven't had an opportunity to develop supervisory skills, and they feel very overwhelmed in that role and really stressed out by that role because they just don't feel competent yet. Well, that impacts their well-being, that impacts their stress level. And so through training and development, we should be able to really enhance the confidence and the competency of our employees, which I really think impacts their overall well-being in the work.
Yes. I very much value the contribution of training and development to the wellness of veterinary professionals across the entire spectrum. What I've seen, in addition to what you said, I completely agree. In addition, I have noticed that in environments where there's not a strong onboarding process or there is not ongoing training and development, efficiency is down. And so you have more of a chaotic work environment where people are brought in on all different levels of skill and ability, and there's no real way for them to get acclimated in to the organization. And then they feel like they're in the way and they're just contributing to more bottlenecking, just a lot of a decrease in productivity. And then the stress levels go up. They may be getting behind in the cases and clients that are coming through the door. So that ongoing training and development can really help. I think there's efficiency pain points along the way to say, well, what kind of development needs to happen here to address these bottlenecks or where people may be lacking their skill sets? I mean, the topic of engagement is huge. We know that is a major issue right now in vet med of just keeping people in the veterinary profession. And so having them know that an organization is going to contribute to their development and growth and they have a pathway forward in the company, it does definitely improve engagement and retention. I think people want to feel valued. I think they want to feel like they're able to contribute to their fullest potential.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned onboarding. That is such a key place where we really need to get it right because, frankly, it's that first 90 days where employees, they leave if they aren't getting oriented and integrated quickly with that team. And so that I agree with you completely. That onboarding piece in particular is crucial to have a good approach to that. Yeah.
So true. I wonder, what are some of the common barriers that you've noticed in creating and implementing an effective training and development program?
Well, I think there's a few. The main one is oftentimes there is nobody that is overseeing training and development.
Yeah.
So nobody is taking that under their wing as a primary responsibility. And of course, in larger organizations, there's teams of people that do training and development, but there's a chief learning officer that is overseeing the teams of people that are doing that. But the principles apply, whether you're dealing with an organization with 10,000 employees or a team of 20. Yeah. You have to have somebody that is going to focus on the training and development of the team members and that oversees that process. One thing I really like to highlight with that is that just because you might have a person that is responsible for overseeing all of that, doesn't mean that they have to do all of the work related to training and development. So somebody, a good, director, call it a director of training and development, they identify training needs and then they find people to help support the training process. That might be they hire a trainer for technicians, or their managers help, or they do some of the training. And so again, I like to say that really that person is responsible for overseeing and coordinating all of the tasks around training and development, but that doesn't mean you have to do all the work related to training and development. And instead, you should find people on your team to help in that process.
So smart, because I can really imagine that if I were in a clinic and I was thinking about bringing in training and development, feeling that, oh, it's all on my shoulders and I don't know everything. I don't have the time to learn all of this and build a structure around how to teach my team. And I think I'm just imagining another barrier off the top of my head is just time, like fitting it in.
Yeah, it is time for sure. And again, that after say an owner or a leader of a business, a team, an organization has identified someone to oversee that process, then you have to give that person some time to focus on that task. Just like you would give them time to manage inventory or do marketing or whatever. It has to be one of the key strategies for that person. Now, the bigger you are, you can have somebody that it's a full-time position. That is their job. In other cases, when you're working with smaller groups, it may be part of their job, but leaders need to make sure that they have some time to allocate time for that, and that they become educated about how to develop and implement a training and development program.
Got it. All right. What other common barriers do you see?
I think that sometimes, so I think that there is a skill set when it comes to training and educating people. And so again, sometimes we put people in training and educational roles and they're not quite sure how to do that. And so it takes time to develop those skills as well. So for example, I'm a professional services veterinarian. I go through presentation skills. I go through a facilitation class. I've done training and development courses. Now, again, this is my primary responsibility. Other people may not have that. Point is, though, is that if you're going to be focusing on training and development, you have to develop skills on how to educate people. And so, when it comes to, for example, there's a whole field out there. You can get a doctorate's degree in this on how to educate adults. And there are principles about teaching and educating adults. For example, adults want to talk about and learn about things that are really timely and really relevant. They don't want superfluous information that they can't use right away because they're very busy.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to be really careful about making sure that you're picking the topics that make sense to them, that will help them do their job better, and that you train them in a really efficient way and in a timely manner. So that would be one example of things you need to keep in mind when you are trying to do education.
Nice. All right, lay it on me. Give me some more, like I'm thinking key principles that I need to keep in mind if we were thinking about creating and implementing a program.
So, around adult learning
or just for adults. Yeah, all for adults.
Adult learning. So the other thing with adults like to learn about things to solve problems. So what are the problems that the people on your team are dealing with? And then would training and learning opportunities help potentially manage those problems? So problem-oriented training can be really valuable. Being creative about formats that we use. So I like to think about training in terms of layering. And so sometimes you start with a webinar and a presentation, and then you maybe add on a group discussion, or you might look at a YouTube clip and talk about it. But it's layering information so that people can go deeper and deeper into their level of understanding. Because remember, it takes time. People don't remember. I mentioned at the beginning, the whole purpose of learning is to get people to do something different, to improve in what they're doing. People don't do something different until they believe that what they are learning is important, it's valuable. And that process sometimes takes time to move people through that understanding, like, this is important enough for me to do something different with it. So that's why I say layering of training and learning opportunities is really important. The other thing I would say to keep in mind, I guess I'm kind of going back to barriers a little bit. But one of the challenges with training and development is sometimes we don't get the results that we want from it. So we do the work. We all, work hard and put a lot of effort and maybe even resources into it, but it doesn't necessarily give us the results that we want. So that's also a barrier, that can happen. And it kind of ties into the adult learning principles and all of that. So, to give you an example, at one point, I wanted all of our clinics to have ultrasounds, and nobody had any experience doing ultrasonography. This was 15 years ago. It's, just not as common. And so we did all the training, and I brought, really good trainers in and all of this. But then I realized nobody was using the ultrasound, and we were not making any money on the ultrasound. And I'm like, we spent all this money buying ultrasounds and doing all this training. What is going on? Well, what I learned is my doctors didn't want to use the ultrasound because our price point was too high. They didn't feel comfortable charging this level of price when they were just learning how to do the procedure. So we backtracked, and we had a couple different levels of like an advanced ultrasound fee and just a triage. And they felt a lot more comfortable as they were learning and doing triage ultrasounds to charge the triage price. And so they got better at it. They started practicing. And then eventually we were getting better results. But again, the training was okay, but there was something after the training that was impacting the outcome of the training. And we had to reflect and make some changes related to that.
Great example. I think it really brings it home that we can all imagine something like that happening. And I appreciate how you didn't just give up on it. You explored and investigated what was the source of this, the holding back of wanting to use this service. Why does it feel like it failed? When you found it, you were able to correct it. And so the training and development was actually in the end a success. I was thinking of another barrier. You kind of already hit on it. It's just like the buy-in of having, maybe we're bringing somebody in externally that's going to train our team on something, and having the team feel like, I don't want to, like, why? We're already so busy. Do I really need to know this? I'm not into it. Like, here's another training that we have to do, or another CE. Sometimes you get that kind of fatigue of just the ongoing, mill of things that have been brought in. And it kind of comes back to the key principles that you were mentioning, that one key principle of making sure that it's really timely and really relevant. My ears perked up immediately when you said that okay, if it's addressing a pain point I as a technician or I as a doctor am experiencing right now, I'm going to be more interested in this particular program. Are there other aspects that you would say are really fundamental when you are, say you're meeting with a veterinary leader and you're talking about implementing some kind of program for their clinic, that you would recommend they consider in this process, like those key principles?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to helping people understand why we are taking the time, energy, and money to provide training or an educational opportunity on whatever it is that we're doing. Because again, if people don't see the value in what you're training on and providing education on, it is going to be received very half-heartedly. You'll have trouble getting people on board. So in any training session I do, for example, I've created probably 30 leadership webinars for VetGirl, like 1 hour ones. Every topic that I do, I start with, why is it important to talk about this topic?
Mm-hmm.
I don't just dive into the content. I talk about, why are we taking an hour out of your busy life to talk about onboarding or whatever the topic is? And so that is the place we always have to start when we're trying to educate people and get them on board. They have to see the value in what they're doing. And we need to spend time communicating about the value, but then what's coming? Why are we doing it? Why is it important? What is the process that we're going to use to get you up to speed on this particular service or piece of equipment or new practice management system? So to give you an example, I converted 7 clinics from one software system to another while we were all open 24/7. and specialists were working out of two of the clinics. And so, but that process, now we did that all in about 3 days, the actual conversion with the team, but the process actually took about a year in advance to get ready for. And so along that time, as I was working with my core team that was helping me on that project, as time went along, we were starting to, wherever we could, get team members involved in, hey, this is coming. This is why we're doing it. These are the problems we're having with our current system that, by the way, you've told me all about for the last 10 years. This is why we're moving to something different. This is going to help us move to the future so that we can do these things. Could you get on this committee and look at some medical record formats and help me develop that? So instead of me just working with my 2 or 3 people at the beginning of the project and then just springing it on everybody a week before implementation, I'm trying to get as many people involved in that process as possible and communicating about the project, why we're doing it, and start that process, that training process beforehand, because then when we went to implement, a lot of people were up to speed on what was coming.
That makes so much sense. The people don't feel blindsided, that they understand the journey and how we got to this point, and they are hopeful that it's going to actually make their life easier or better.
Yes, exactly. The journey.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
So do you have any particular models that you recommend?
Yeah, there's a number of models out there when it comes to developing, learning programs. One that is very commonly used is called the ADDIE model. And before I jump into that, I just wanted to just make mention about when we think about a learning program, oftentimes when we think about, say, a training class or a workshop or a webinar or something like that. But learning happens in so many ways in a veterinary organization. And so, frankly, most learning and oftentimes best levels of learning happen on the job when you're working alongside peers and you're watching them and you're talking about things. So there's kind of learning that just comes from interaction with peers, less formal approaches. And then there's more formal approaches like a workshop or a training session or things like that. And then I think the third thing to keep in mind is there's the resource center. And so one of the things that teams learning people need to keep in mind is that, are you creating a centralized resource center for all the things people need to access? Because goodness knows we cannot remember everything that comes through our life every day in a veterinary practice. The amount of information is overwhelming. So we have to have really good ways to access information from anywhere, online, quickly, in a well-organized way so that we don't have to store all kinds of crazy amounts of information, but we can get information that we need quickly. And so I always think about it as the formal learning, the informal learning, and then the resource center. That is really important, when we think about training and development. So back to the ADDIE model, ADDI. It's it's an acronym for. Let me just pull that out. The first A is for analyze, D is design, the second D is develop, I is implement, and the E is evaluate. So it's a really great way to think about the whole process of getting ready to do training in a particular area. So let me maybe give an example. Let's say I have an idea. We have a problem that we need to solve. Maybe we have more anesthetic deaths with our patients than is typical, or we're seeing more for some reason over the last couple of years, and we're trying to figure out what is causing that problem. Is there anything that we can do to manage that? And so the first step would be analyzing that problem. What resources do we have currently to help people learn how to do anesthetic procedures safely? How are we preparing patients? Do we use checklists, et cetera? What resources do we have? How do we monitor complications? How do we respond? So it's really analyzing what is currently going on. And with the analysis is trying to determine then what is it that we are trying to achieve through training. And so we always want to start with, anytime we do training and development, what are our learning outcomes or learning objectives for that particular situation? And we always want to start there, because once we have clarity about what is it exactly that we're trying to achieve, then we can start pulling in and making decisions about what resources do we need? How do we need to approach this? Mm-hmm. So it's really doing kind of an overall analysis of what it is that we're trying to achieve. What are the things that we're trying to accomplish? And then once you have a good sense of that, looking into the analysis, into the design part of it. So the first D. And really that is about answering all those questions. All right, these are our objectives. These are the things we want to accomplish. So the question is, who's going to do the training? What is the training going to be on? What is the content? What resources are we going to use? When are we going to complete training? How are we going to evaluate success for training? It is really that design stage where we're just trying to put the plan together that we can then eventually implement. And then we move into development. And so, okay, now we have our goals about what we want to do and how we want to do. And now we got to bring all the resources together. So maybe we have to create a checklist, or maybe we access a checklist that's already available, by anesthesia specialists. And so we move into that, development process. Maybe we need to create a PowerPoint or a wet lab, whatever that is. So that's where we're in that development mode. And then we move into implementation. And I always like to say, once you have your design and you've developed your plan, I always love to do like pilot, sessions if possible, particularly if you have a big group. You can, sometimes you can do training and then you're like, oh boy, I should have done it that way, or there's other things I should have done. And so if you can start with smaller groups, particularly, and this is really key, start with a group that's going to be more receptive to the change than others that will be, maybe a little less receptive, right? We have those people on every team. So start there. Start with the people that get it and want to see that change, and then evaluate it. And then finally, it's the implementation piece that is important. And so we implement, and now we evaluate. So after you go through all of that, we always want to reflect on how well did we do with that training approach? Did it help us meet our objectives? What did staff say about the training? Was it beneficial to them? What do we need to do more training? Is there something else we need to do to further meet that objective? So ADDIE, ADDIE, it's a really nice model to think about how to develop that training approach.
It makes sense. It's easy to remember too. I appreciate the is it acronym? Yes, the acronym. It's like it sticks in my mind, and it's very logical. I really like that it has the evaluation part at the end too, because we need to make sure it didn't just we think we did a good job. We want to hear from people. Did that work? Maybe has certain metrics we're measuring. We can see, the skill sets learned or the changes in outcomes with anesthesia. So it's very practical.
Yes. Yeah. And it's easy to find that model. Just Google it, ADDIE. And it's a very popular training and development model. So if anybody wants more information on that, there's lots of literature out there on that.
Wonderful. So as we're coming down the home stretch today, I'm going to ask for you to think about 2 key takeaways for anybody listening today that you want them to leave this podcast with. If they take nothing else away from it, the 2 things that you hope stick for them today.
Well, again, I think the first one is that somebody on the team needs to take responsibility for training and development. And remember that you can pull in other people to help in that process. But somebody really needs to attend to it. And I think the last one is, we're thinking about and hoping for with any training and development program is progress, not perfection. And so I do think another barrier, sometimes we get paralyzed because we don't have the perfect PowerPoint or the perfect training session or whatever it is. But we just need to get started. And little by little, the more you do, you'll see where that really is making a difference. And I think ultimately, what we're really trying to create is an environment, a culture where it's a learning culture. The people that we hire into this particular group or organization, they're learners. They want to get better. They want to do better. And not only do they have the motive, but we provide a really great resources for them to do that. And I think any organization that does really well in creating a culture of learning has all kinds of opportunities to really achieve the goals that they have.
I absolutely agree. I appreciate all that you brought to this conversation today. And under the umbrella of wellness, we kind of come back to, if you really want to keep your employees happy and you want them to be in this profession for the long haul, then invest in their development. It makes us feel more confident. It makes us feel excited to come into work each day, to know that we are going to do a good job, that somebody's investing in our future. I think it's just very motivating, and it sends a very strong message to the staff. It's also better for the patients and better for the clients too. If we're performing excellent medicine and also have great leadership skills, there are a lot of wins in this conversation today. And so, Dr. Sally, for those listening, if they want to get in touch with you, where should they find you?
Yeah, I have a website, veterinaryleadershipservices.com, and also email vetleader@yahoo.com.
Excellent. I will link that up in the show notes. And thanks again for being on with us today.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. Enjoy talking with you.
Same here. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.